Hi, welcome to the Hangout. Now I know what one is, so it's good to be here. I'm here alongside my friend John Watson, another all-time Formula One driver. Also, we've got with us Richard Wiseman, the archivist, who did Hunt Lauder and Rush, I believe. And alongside him, Matthew Whiteman, who's the director of Hunt Lauder. Welcome all. We're going to be talking about the upcoming Monaco Grand Prix and Monacos of the past. And I'll let me introduce you, pass it on to John.
Well, I mean, what can you say about Monte Carlo that Rupert hasn't already told you about? Because I suppose the one oddity in the Grand Prix calendar, and thank goodness we've got one oddity remaining, because I don't like some of the circuits that Formula One is racing on right now. I mean, some of the runoff areas are almost as far distant as another continent. They are just lacking in character, personality. But you go to Monte Carlo, forget all the rubbish we're going to talk about a bit later about the party side of it and all the fun things that took place. The things that Rupert won't tell you, but I know, because I witnessed some of them, and I tell you what, they were plain ugly. Absolutely.
Absolutely. It was dreadful. It was dreadful.
But as a Grand Prix, it is a unique event. It's the only remaining Grand Prix on a pure road circuit. Remember, this racetrack was first instigated 1929. If anybody's young enough to remember when 1929 was.
Where were you on the grid?
I was in the grandstands cheering for a British Williams, I can't remember the full title, which was a pseudonym, in a Bugatti. And of course, since then, Monaco has evolved into being the principal, if you must go to a Grand Prix or you're a potential sponsor, darling, come on my yacht and see how I can entertain you, and then stick my hand in your pocket and nick your millions. That's what it's all about. And the odd party as well, Rupert, eh?
Absolutely. We had a few of those.
I've got to chip in here, John, because you gave me a great entry. We were just talking earlier before this live stream began. You gave me a fantastic new entry into the Racing Drivers Big Book of Excuses, because you were on pole in '77, which was also Rupert's first Monaco Grand Prix. And you said, I didn't get the full advantage of pole position because my rear wheels were on a zebra crossing and gave me too much wheel spin.
That's true, but the difference is I got the Rolex watch. You didn't. That was for pole position. 1977. In those days, Rolex, who are now the official timing and scoring partner of Formula One, gave the pole sitter, pole winner, a Rolex watch. Of course, Sir Jackie Stewart needs 2 arms to get all his Rolex watches. He's got so many. But also one of their brand ambassadors, and it was through Jackie, in fact, that I received my Rolex watch, of which I'm very proud, and I've worn more or less every day since. Rupert, you remember my pole position, 1977 Monte Carlo?
You know what, John? I was just thinking, from where I was on the grid, I don't think I could see you on pole position.
I couldn't see you where you were, that is for sure.
Yes. Well, at least I finished then.
Yes, no, I didn't, in fact, in that race.
I did.
The trouble with the pole position and the grid in Monaco, it isn't a straight. It's a long, long curve. You come out of the final turn onto the straight, and you can't see Saint-Devoux because it's like a sort of an elongated banana, and it's not that long. It is actually pretty quick, and this year with the turbocharged cars, the speed that these cars are now generating with the horsepower and the hybrid power units that are a part of Formula One, it's going to be interesting to see how they get them stopped, because also some of these cars have got they've all got, in fact, a fly-by-wire rear brake mechanism. Traditionally, Formula One cars, as road cars, have got master cylinders which are actuated by your foot, but this is a fly-by-wire brake, and some of the teams and some of the drivers are finding it quite difficult to balance the front-rear brake balance of the car, and I just wonder how many cars will make it into Saint-Devoux without a trip down the escape road, or in other bits of the circuit, for example, coming out of the tunnel. I would imagine they'll be doing 180 miles an hour, maybe more, before they have to brake. Thank goodness there's a runoff which takes them all the way down to back these days.
Yeah, not like, who's it lost it down there? Jenson Button lost it there?
Lots have. Yes, lots have lost it down there. I mean, Perez last year in the Mercedes tried a suicide kamikaze dive down the inside. There wasn't room for half a car, and he tried to force his way through. Contact, and of course then the damage follows. That's part of the skill of winning, or certainly driving at Monte Carlo, but winning. And then you look at the people that have won a great deal there, and people like Graham Hill and Jackie Stewart, the great, much missed Ayrton Senna. I think 6 times he won in the Principality. It's not by luck that these drivers win Grand Prix in Monte Carlo, and the skill is actually keeping it off the barriers, and the mental pressure that's involved. So 78 laps, I think it is, to the finish of the Grand Prix. It's hard work.
It is. Were you there that year that Ayrton did that most amazing qualifying lap?
Well, I was actually in the McLaren pits watching, and there had been a battle between Prost and Senna as to who would get the pole position, and I was just going Senna, Prost, and then in the closing moments of that session, Senna got back in his car, very quietly went out and did a mesmeric lap. I mean, a lap of the gods, and suddenly Alain Prost, who had been quickest driver to date, had been standing up in his car, as he was wont to do, talking to the French press, and they were all lauding this wonderful lap by the maestro of Monaco, Alain Prost. And then the news came across the public address that Senna had done a time which nobody believed. And as quick as Alain Prost could get his next word out, the 20 or 30 journalists listening to him, where have they gone? They disappeared. Vaporized. They couldn't get down to...
John, can I ask you a question?
And poor Alain Prost was left like little orphan Annie, standing up in his car. Nobody loves me anymore.
John, can I ask you, well, both of you, with Monaco, you know, you're saying it's this wonderful old circuit, one of the last. If you were to get back into one of those F1 cars now, would it be as much of a challenge, do you think, as it was in your day, or is it an easier thing? How's the technology versus the racing driver working?
I think the car would find me a bigger challenge than I would find the car a challenge. Frankly, the modern Formula One car, as I've seen them, just the level of technology has... The increase in technology is more like akin to flying the space shuttle and flying in a normal passenger aircraft. They're so sophisticated, so complicated. And this is an issue that, you know, my generation of drivers, Rupert, we wouldn't have the mental capacity to deal with 1% of it, let alone 100%. Our focus would be just simply, these things are bloody quick, and where's the brake pedal? And of course you brake with your left foot. In our day, we braked with our right foot.
Correct.
But so you're saying that the kind of seat of the pants driving has gone out the window? Are these drivers now a different breed to you guys then?
No, I don't think they're a different breed. They're just the modern version of what we were now. It's still the same basic skills are required. You still have to be able to feel what's happening with the car as it starts to move. Your arse tells you first. What do you say? Well,
basically, it's your whole body is one big organ. So, your whole body is a sensory receptor.
True.
This is going on global.
I know. I can't help it.
Your hands, your body, your bottom, your legs, your feet, every part of your body is receiving information coming through the pedals, through the chassis, through the seat, through the steering wheel, and of course you're being subjected to lateral loads and fore and aft loads from the braking. But the difference that we have today is that you've still got all those values to deal with, but you've got all these additional issues. You've got somebody in your ear talking to you probably half the lap. And I mean, listening to the most recent Grand Prix in Spain, Lewis Hamilton, who won the Grand Prix, was on the radio, off the radio. Why aren't you talking to me? Stop talking to me. There's so much they've got to think about. More, I think, than any season I remember. And doing it in Spain where you've got time actually to catch your breath and maybe sort of regroup. In Monte Carlo, you don't. It is 100% concentration from the minute you leave the pit lane until that checkered flag falls.
You cannot afford to make a mistake in Monte Carlo. Absolutely not.
Yeah, but Rupert, people would argue maybe you can now because the likelihood of losing any part of your organ, which is your body, are probably somewhat smaller. I mean, you guys did have a fighter pilot mentality. You had to have, didn't you? You were going to win the race. You were not going to be the one that crashed because that's the only way you can think, isn't it? Whereas now, all right, they've got all the technical stuff to deal with, but do you think that the mindset is still the same? Is Lewis Hamilton thinking I could get hurt, or is it because you must have done? I mean, driving around Monaco in the 70s, was fucking lethal, wasn't it?
Yeah, but
all the footage I've seen of the, you know, dreadful crashes and.
I never got into a car thinking, okay, I'm going to have a big crash. I certainly didn't think that. I always thought that's not going to happen to me, because it did happen, obviously, but I never had that attitude. Did you?
And I think you have an awareness, there's a subconscious awareness that this is a dangerous sport, and it was incumbent upon all of us to drive within the limits of either the circuit or the car, or your own personal limits.
Not to endanger each other.
But not also to put yourself into potential area of danger. Now, not every driver maybe thought about it, some might say too deeply, as I might have done, or very surface, if you wish, level of thought. Some just got in and drove because that was their nature, their instinct. But certainly in that period that Rupert and I were racing in the middle 70s, it was a dangerous era in Formula One. But it's more reflective than it was maybe at the time. We had the best cars of that generation. We had the safest circuits of the generation, best medical and facility backup. So we felt that we were being looked after and were in the best equipment to go about the job we were doing. It was a fact that a number of drivers maybe were being severely injured, or in some instances tragically losing their lives. Whereas today, I think there is a difference where I think one of the problems is it's almost as if there's a disrespect for the profession, and that's been brought about because of the massive increase in circuit and car safety, principally following on from the tragedy of Imola in 1994, when Roland Ratzenberger and notably Ayrton Senna lost their lives. And certainly the Senna fatality clearly drove the FIA, who are the governing body of motorsport, to ensure that it was never going to happen again. We would see a fatality principally in your living room with your family watching a Grand Prix. And thankfully, we've not seen that. We've seen serious accidents. I mean, I think of Mark Webber a couple of years ago in Valencia, running into the back of another car, a car going airborne. In our day,
no way to
well, you've had a horrendous accident. The car would have been like a squash can. The driver would have been dead, and they probably would have been roasted as well. And thank goodness we've moved forward from that. The one area where I feel Formula One has maybe lost the plot is that the reward for the better or the good driver is not there, because any driver today can get into a car and drive it quickly for a lap or 2 laps. Ultimately, still the best drivers win the race, but you've got too many young people or too many drivers coming in whose understanding or skill or maybe even their intellect is not equal to that of the best out there.
If I can drag you both for a moment back to 1977, and by the look of the decor behind you, you're already there. Rupert, you actually did very well just to qualify in the race, because that was in the era where 35, 40 cars used to turn up and only 20 were able to qualify for Monaco. And you got in your first ever Monaco Grand Prix. I think it was your second Formula One race.
It was. The first one was Brands Hatch, the Race of Champions, which as I came round the corner on the first lap, I was, I think, in 4th place, and I went, what am I doing here? and I nearly lost it because I scared myself. I'm sorry, what was the question again, Richard?
I was just thinking that reminds me of the old joke of having to come in for a pit stop for a change of underwear.
Yes. Yeah, but you're right. Back 40 cars did turn up, something ridiculous like that. And then we had pre-qualifying and all. Do you remember that?
I do. It was a very difficult time.
It was very difficult for everybody. I mean, in 1 year, didn't you guys not qualify?
Well, and I did the qualify in 1980, and that was the worst day of my life.
Yeah, I can remember that. Terrible.
In 1983, we went to Monaco as part of the McLaren Marlboro team. My teammate Nicky Lauda, you know, Nicky. Oh, how are you doing? On the Thursday, we did what we did, and of course, Thursday afternoon was a qualifying day, and we didn't qualify. And Ron Dennis and John Barnard, the owners of McLaren, were mortified. And we said, we've got no grip. And remember, this is 83. I'd won the Long Beach Grand Prix a month or two earlier,
right? And
Nicky had come second, so we had a very strong car on a street track. In Monte Carlo, we had the same problem that we had in qualifying in Long Beach. We didn't generate the tire temperature to get the grip to enable us to go quickly. McLaren managed to get some special tires brought down from Michelin's headquarters. Saturday morning, ran the tires, much more performance from the car, from the tire, and we're both comfortably within inside the number of cars allowed to race. 10 minutes before the qualifying began on Saturday afternoon, it rained, and we didn't even get. I don't think. Well, we did go out, I believe, but obviously we couldn't match the laps that we'd done in the morning. So the times that had been established on Thursday afternoon's qualifying were the times that stood for the grid. So Lada and myself got out of our cars and looked at each other. Well, we did our bit. Our team principal, Ron Dennis, in one of his more eloquent moments, turned around and said, "I wish you two had crashed rather than not qualifying."
Really?
Thanks a bunch, mate.
Yeah. I've got to say, Rupert, that McLaren's a fantastic team name, and John won many Grand Prix for them. But particularly for people that saw Rush last year, Hesketh is arguably one of the most charismatic of all, and you were driving for them in '77, weren't you?
I've got to say, it was a lot of fun driving for Alexander, and the whole team, based up Eastern Nesson at the family home up in Northampton. It was the characters, all their Bubbles Horsley and Nigel Stroud, Ball of String. It was the whole crew was an amazing bunch of people. Plus, of course, the sponsors were the best sponsors in the world. Penthouse Magazine, Rizzler Rolling Papers.
It was a bit like Brideshead Revisited does Formula One.
Yes.
in the Hesketh team.
Yes.
That was the team mascot, was a teddy bear.
That's right.
It's like Sebastian Flight in Brideshead Revisited. I know that you wanted to be an actor as a young man. You would have been a wonderful Sebastian Flight.
You told me you were.
Jeremy Irons plays Rupert Keegan.
Yes.
Spot the difference.
John, I think we're going to have to prompt you.
Jeremy Irons one time did a celebrity race at Silverstone. It was way back in the early 90s, and at that time I had a role at Silverstone, and I was asked to go out and give Jeremy some advice. And I gave him the advice, but because the first time you go on a racetrack, the amount of focus and concentration that you require sometimes enables you to not be able to take instruction. I was saying, no, Jeremy, don't turn in now. I'll tell you when to turn in. And it was just a waste of space. So eventually we got to the corner towards the end of this session, and he was about to turn in, and I grabbed the steering wheel and stopped him turning in. And then I said, now turn in. He was so pissed about that.
Really?
Talk about an ego. And it's one thing having on stage, but
yes,
the racing is my platform, my stage.
Yes.
Oh, dear. A little bit.
Really?
Well, it was Rupert's stage after his family, his father in particular, talked him out of wanting to become a ballerina, we've discovered this morning.
Yeah, no, that wasn't quite that. I wanted to be an actor.
Mike Keegan, and maybe Rupert doesn't really know his dad. He was a bit of a rogue. I mean, charming rogue at that, and motor racing's proliferated with dads who are charming rogues. And because Rupert was the third of 3 children. Not sure he was planned, but certainly he came along. And being the third child, of course, he was a bit of a mummy's boy. Wendy, a lovely, lovely, lovely mother. And I think Mike was a bit afraid that Rupert might turn into a bit of a sister. And he might want to go on the stage as you do,
Yes. Well, it was that.
So Daddy got him into a race car.
Yes.
Yeah, I make a man of my son.
Well,
that's right.
Were you under that great pressure?
One day, so it was all right, I found my little.
You don't want me on this show anymore, do you?
No, it's perfect having you, darling.
When you see the wine bill afterwards, you may not.
Oh, yeah.
So, did you ever actually have a pair of ballet shoes, Rupert? We need to establish.
I didn't, actually.
No, he had 3 pairs.
Actually, I did have a ballet dancer. It was German, but he was straight.
What? What do you mean? Explain, Rupert.
Off the stage.
Because you were sort of wanting his ballet shoes, or?
No, that's exactly. He said he was. I couldn't.
Nothing like a pair of used pumps, is there, Rupert?
I couldn't fit in.
I think we better move back to the racing boots, because I was thinking earlier on when we were talking about accidents at Monaco. Have either of you ever had to pick yourselves out of the Armco there, whether in a Formula 3 car or a Formula 1 car?
Both. I crashed 1 year in the Formula 3, and then I was on fire in 1977 in the qualifying, which I had to make an exit of the car at Saint David with burning oil all over me, which was rather painful and not very pleasant at all.
No, it's not. I mean, anything at Monaco, if you hit a barrier, ordinarily you're in the barrier. I think the only time I had a brush with the barrier was in qualifying for, I think, 78 Grand Prix, coming out of Casino Square down towards the Mirabel corner, and it was a hot lap, and on the outside of the exit of the corner I hit the barrier, and directly behind the barrier was a future world champion called Keke Rosberg, and Keke was most impressed because I didn't lift. Hit the barrier, bang, but kept it in a Rupert.
As you
do, and I ended up being second quickest.
Very good. I also had a bit of a big crash in '78 when I was driving the Durex 30th car, going down into what's the right one as you go out of Casino Square and into the right hander?
Well, you got Mirabeau.
Going down there, I had Hans Sturck, who 2 weeks earlier in Long Beach had come over the back of me, over my rear wheel, taken up my rear wing, and hit my helmet. Did exactly the same thing in Monaco.
And it wasn't his fault.
No, of course not.
His fault.
I had a tyre mark down my helmet. I went, that's getting a bit too close.
Well, I mean, they call Hans Sturck hands, knees, and bumps a daisy. I think he would have done it right twice, didn't he?
Yes. Yes.
Let me ask you another thing, just chaps. John, you make light of it all. You both do, but are there moments in that period that have stayed with you ever since? I mean, I made a film about a Battle of Britain pilot a while ago, and he admits that there's a part of him that's never escaped that period. And I know we're talking about motor racing here, not shooting down Germans and aeroplanes, but you both saw some pretty scary stuff, and you must have had moments when your life flashed before you. Does some of it stick with you, or am I just being too arty-farty?
I mean, in terms of speaking as a person, personally, there were a number of incidents. I mean, Monza 1981 was an accident which I had, which was shown live on television, and it potentially was it looked to be a fatal accident. As it turned out, it wasn't, surprisingly.
Oh, because you're sitting here.
Well, anyway, but it looked serious. I didn't see the accident because I was moving away from it. I only actually saw it 6 or 7 hours later. I think the worst thing was that lots of our friends who did lose their lives in accidents, and many of them were caused by reasons beyond the driver's control, frequently by mechanical failures or other, maybe somebody else's accident involving you, or fluids or whatever getting on the racetrack. And I suppose if you look back and realize that the circuits that we were racing on, while we thought they were safe, they weren't. And the kind of driver protection that circuits have now got is a mile. I mean, it's not a mile, it's a century beyond those that we were having. Yeah. And I mean, there's another movie recently was launched called One, which was a lot of the incidents and sadnesses of that era. And I remember Max Mosley in his commentary saying that a young Austrian driver, Helmut Koenig, had an accident in Watkins Glen in '74 when the car split the Armco barrier. And one of the marshals went to pick up the driver's helmet, and when he picked up the helmet, Helmut Koenig's head was still in the helmet. And that's how it was. And I didn't know that at the time. I only learned about it a year ago. And I was quite shocked, and it made me think maybe more about the era in which we were racing, that there were great dangers which probably we didn't acknowledge to the degree we should have done because we thought we had the safest cars, circuits, whatever.
If we're going to compare war wounds, Rupert, I know that you broke your feet in Canada, didn't you? But you, John, did you break the same leg twice, or you broke both legs in separate accidents? What happened to you during the 70s?
Well, I had two. One accident was in Formula 2 in 1970 in France, and that was a left leg, ankle, and arm. And then in Brands Hatch 1973, I had a double compound fracture of my right leg, so the tib and fib were sticking out through my overalls. Apparently somebody went back to Brands Hatch quite recently, and they found some bones which they thought might have belonged to me. I mean, I didn't have them DNA'd or anything like that, but you know, if anthropologists are probably could have.
Could be Jacques Lafitte's feet there.
No, that was here's different.
Was that your worst injury then, Rupert? Because I know that you had several.
My worst injury was at the Dutch Grand Prix in 1978, where I had a flat tire in the early morning warm-up. Flat tire in the very fast section at the back of Zandvoort, and just went straight in about 180, through 4 layers of catch fences.
I mean, Zandvoort is a wonderful racetrack. Sadly, the part of the circuit Rupert's referring to is no longer actually in use. It's still a circuit that's an active circuit. But I actually thought some of your worst injuries, Rupert, were not so much going into the catch fencing, it was getting friction burns in your elbows and your knees.
It was an occupational hazard, as you can well remember yourself.
I only had the knees, not the elbows.
Yes. Right. Well, yes, because the carpets were really bad in those days. They're not like carpets are today.
That's why I call us carpet baggers.
Yes. Well, John, I mean, do you think Formula One has lost its partying ways?
I think because of the growth of Formula One and the limitations and restrictions of access that now exists, but also I think that the level to which Formula One is run at, there's not the possibility to enjoy friendships, camaraderie that we would have done in the 70s particularly. I think the 70s was a great era in Formula One simply because you would actually talk to a competitor. You might even have dinner with them or a number of them. And some of the flyaway events in South America.
The French would
always
they stick together.
They would stick together like shit to a blanket, wouldn't they?
Right.
The French would only ever eat with the French because they're French.
Yeah.
And that's why the French stick together, because they're French. But everybody else would mix and match. You'd maybe play a bit of tennis, go out in a boat, golf, and maybe at night time you go out and have a sherbet, or maybe in the case of the French, they would have to have wine gums.
Yes.
They didn't drink, they had wine gums instead.
Yes. Did you ever drink before the race?
I think very occasionally I had a single glass, but because actually the French would drink with their dinner, I thought, well, if they're doing it, why shouldn't try it and see if there's any detrimental effect?
Yes.
And
I never found any myself.
Well, basically, I always felt that I wanted to go to bed without any alcohol. I wanted to wake up knowing that my head was clear, whatever. But I had a very narrow perspective or view of how I felt I should conduct myself as a Grand Prix driver.
Yeah.
But one of the troubles today is that there's so little time available to drivers outside of what their involvement is with the team. This weekend, a few of them will get shit-faced because there's a really lovely Irish lady, sister of Eddie Irvine, called Sonia, who runs an extremely successful nightclub operation, and it's expanded into other areas now.
Oh.
No doubt on Sunday night, where previously it used to be the Monte Carlo Club.
Right.
Right at the point of the little peninsula outside Monaco. It's actually in France. So that would be where they all pile into. But I mean, inside the Monte Carlo Club, they charge like a rhinoceros. So most drivers now tend to go to the Amber Lounge, where they get looked after. And it's a place where the investors, the partners, in Ron Dennis language, we don't call them sponsors anymore. They're investors and partners. So they will take a table for dinner and whatever else might be available. And that's the only place you'll ever see a driver letting their hair down. Except, so I forgot about Goodwood. You go to Goodwood, don't you?
I do indeed.
Don't go anywhere near Jensen Buttonrose motorhome. Party Central. Well, they say. I haven't been invited, but then I'm not a party animal.
You're talking about the Festival of Speed.
Festival of Speed, yeah.
Yes, okay. Yeah, it's always such a great place. Have you been?
I've been many, many times. But in a sense, that's the atmosphere of Formula One in the 70s. It's more relaxed. People have got access. You'll get an autograph book, and you'll sign it, and you'll smile, and you'll say thank you to the person who's given it to you.
And most of us are there driving the old cars.
Many of us are there driving the old cars. I'm not doing it now these days.
Do you remember Seneca Lodge, John?
Seneca Lodge was a very, very dangerous place to go. Those that came out alive will tell you that. It was the place at Watkins Glen where most of the teams stayed. The drivers would have stayed in the Glen Motor Inn, which was slightly more upmarket, probably less fun.
Yeah.
But Seneca Lodge was... Well, on the Sunday night at Seneca Lodge, you had to take a life belt with you because there's so much beer swilling around on the floor.
Yes.
You fell down, you're drowned.
That's right. Remember the bar?
The bar was
fantastic.
Yeah.
But Watkins Glen was always, I think, one of my favourite racetracks. And the event was usually the last event of the calendar. So it was the end of term. You know, everybody was in a relaxed mood. A lot of appalling behaviour. And if it ever got chronicled into something like a DVD idea, folks, you do that.
But John, did you see we defined...
You couldn't watch it without admiring the stamina, commitment of those that were partying that night.
This reminds me of, to mention a wider point, in that I was having a conversation last year with a footballer of the 1970s and 80s, same era as you, who shall remain nameless, but it was John Walk, who used to play for Scotland. And he said, you know, the guys today, they might have all the money, but we had all the fun. And part of the reason for that was that you all lived in a world before camera phones. So you could be as naughty as you like, but people couldn't go click, click and take a photo of you misbehaving.
What's happened to the current footballers? Have they misbehaved pretty badly, and there's plenty of camera phones around? Maybe they've got mates in the newspapers that they can say, please, 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 give us a break.
Yes, that must be the case.
I mean, camera phones are the dearth of having fun. And but I suppose taking the current crop of drivers, and there's a few amongst them who know how to enjoy themselves. But if you think forward to 20 years, I dread to think the kind of Formula One driver we will see, because those of today will be saying in 20 years' time, these kids, they don't know how to enjoy themselves. We used to have so much fun. We used to sit with our steering wheel and play games and all these little buttons, and it was really good fun.
Yes. And now we're flying.
Terrible. Terrible.
Yeah. What did you think of Rush? Just talking about their 70s.
I personally really liked the film. I thought it was fantastic. Obviously, they took a bit of Hollywood license with the relationship between James and Mickey, but all in all, I thought it was pretty good. What do you think?
I think they could have made it an 18 certificate. We could have had a lot more carnal action, because according to both guys, they got a lot of action, but we got the tease, but we didn't get the action.
Well, I should ask you both, as Grand Prix drivers of the 1970s and early 80s in Monaco, we've got the overalls on and all the gear, and you're the centre of attention. How difficult was it to make new female friends under those circumstances?
In Rupert's case, first Grand Prix in Monaco, it probably was all those things. In our case at Brabham, we had a slightly different agenda. We were there to try and maybe win a Grand Prix.
But I was magazine to go out with beautiful women, so that's what I had to do, and I took my job seriously.
Yes, I was sponsored by Martini Rossi, and I couldn't enjoy their product.
Ah, there you go. Yeah. Anyway.
So were you literally beating them away with the proverbial big shitty stick then?
Yes. I'm afraid so. It was particularly good.
I think Rupert had a lot more fun, probably a bit more action as well at the tail of the grid than there was at the front of the grid.
Do you not remember before the start of the race, when you were in that tower and they're giving the final briefing in Monaco, and there's all the TV channels, the TV vaguely, but you don't remember what happened then because I was late, and it came on the TVs, and there was me on top of a yacht playing with the parts of some young nubile, beautiful girl. And Eddie Cheever just reminded me.
Do you remember her name?
Yes, Johanna.
Johanna?
Yes.
And your mother.
It was pretty good. Yeah, I mean, before I go down in flames, try me.
I mean, it was a period and a place and a time. Yes, I mean, there was a lively venue. The best part of it, really, for me, was always on the Sunday night. And I mean, again, going back to '78 more than '77. Everybody of the group. I mean, I'm talking about Brabham team drivers, and some of the McLaren team are also at the tip-top bar. following the race. James was there.
Well, I was well protected that year.
Well, you're in jail already.
No, I was well protected because I was running the Durex car.
Okay, you're very... I know, and what can you say? But we were always in the tip-top bar and the course in Monte Carlo, which is a very unique principality, but it's got a very strong legal ethic that you're not allowed to drink in the street, and everybody turns around and says, "Oh, go away, leave us alone, we're having fun." The police gathered at the top of Casino Square, and there's about maybe 20 of them, batons drawn, and at a given signal, like a these police came down, swinging their batons, and they didn't care who they connected with. And there were women as well as guys were getting clipped by barriers, by batons. And I mean, eventually the crowd had to dissipate. But it was sort of a rather unfortunate end to what would have been a really lovely evening. Nobody was actually doing anything particularly naughty or wrong, but just the Monegasque authorities had decided enough is enough, and we're going to move it on. But otherwise, it was always good fun.
Great. It was a very good place.
At Monaco '78, Rupert, there was a photo on your Twitter feed recently of you driving the Durex 30s around Monte Carlo, and your comment beneath it was, "I can't remember anything about this race, so I must have still been drunk from the night before."
No, I was just joking.
Rupert, can we talk a little bit about your project, Made It Out Alive? What you're planning?
Yes.
I mean, I know a bit because I've been talking to you about it, but just give us the rundown on what you're up to.
Well, what I've done, I mean, I've done a lot of interviews already, and somebody else I want to interview shortly is the young man sitting next to me. But yes, Made It Out Alive is going to be a film about those years that we were there, and we're going to be talking about more about the fun times, and obviously there was a bit of tragedy involved in it as well. But it's going to be really more of an upbeat side to the sport, and what happened, and what we all got up to, and what we didn't get up to. And Matthew, you'll have lots of ideas on that yourself, won't you?
Of course I will, darling.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting. You know, as you know, Richard and I made The Hunt versus Lauda, and you know, it's run on the BBC. Is it 4 times now?
Yeah.
And the audience is extraordinary for it, because you think, well, maybe people aren't that interested in this period. Maybe it's just our generation. It doesn't seem to be at all. I'm very curious about just why there is such a huge draw for it. I mean, there are obvious reasons. You can see the 70s as more of a gladiatorial thing or whatever, but it's more than that, isn't it? It's
seems to be across the board. The
Yeah.
stuff, 70s stuff. I mean, whether it's been motor racing or anything else, music or whatever, all seems to be in the vogue right now.
We should also mention, Rupert, the fantastic archive film of yourself that you've managed to find. One of my favourite moments being, you were talking about nightclubs earlier, when you're, I couldn't recognise the club. It looked like Studio 54, but you were on the dance floor with Keith Moon.
Yeah, it was the Embassy Club in London, and that was Keith Moon and Amanda Lear, and another.
Oh, she was a man as well, wasn't she?
She was, yes. Oh, you know, spoiled for choice, really. And also, Lyndall Hobbs was there. It was Al Pacino's girlfriend.
Really?
Yes,
Really?
lovely girl. And
You never name drop much, do you?
no, not at all. Yeah, it was a particularly good night. That, I mean, unfortunately, it was just I think a few weeks before Keith died. Yeah.
What a life.
Yeah.
Well, that is a way to lead a life.
Yes. Well,
Well, we should mention, Rupert, because I don't know whether John's aware of this, that when your original promotional movie came out as a B feature in 1978, it was on the same bill as
The Bitch. Yes, it was. It was the B movie to The Bitch, and it did very well.
with Joan Collins in all her glory, swinging naked on a swing.
Yeah, she wasn't too pleased with me a few years later because I, unfortunately, had a little altercation with her boyfriend who knocked his teeth out.
I worked on a Joan Collins film.
But anyway, I think he's forgiven me.
Is that Bungalow Bill?
Absolutely.
Really? God, bloody hell.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Good old days, Rupert.
Good old days, yeah.
Beach was a great movie. I don't know why it didn't get nominated for a BAFTA. I mean, we've just seen the BAFTA the other day. The sort of thing that, culture like that, we don't see it these days, really, do we?
Exactly. I mean,
And Joan was outstanding.
She was.
She's a good actress, too.
Yes.
What was the story? I mean, this is not a million miles away, but when Long Beach brought the Grand Prix to that venue in California, what was the story that the pits at Long Beach were opposite a load of porn cinemas?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Were they?
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, the original Long Beach circuit layout had pits on one side of the road.
On the top?
Yeah, the top, yeah. And on the other side, because we were on the other side, and there was barriers and there was debris fencing, so we weren't particularly trying to look through 2 layers of debris fencing to see what was beyond. But I mean, Long Beach in those days was known as Sailor's Town, and it was not the nicest bit of sort of Southern California that you might wish to visit.
Yeah.
And at night time, certainly in that part of town, you would have wanted to, you wouldn't have been out on your own.
Yeah.
And what's wrong with the porno movie house, for goodness sake?
Exactly.
You want to be careful about which seat you sat on.
Like that.
Well, I mean, everybody's wearing Macs anyway. So what the hell? I'm talking about the Macintosh, not the modern Mac, the laptop thing. I'm talking about
yes, the brolly. Yeah,
something like that. Yes.
So anyway, yes.
But it's very odd because you can see photos of you and John, Rupert, taken in the pits in Long Beach 77, 78, and as you sort of look through the railings behind you, all of a sudden there's a cinema with sort of Debbie Does Dallas written on it.
Really? All right.
Yeah.
Never seen that.
Well, I think it was Deep Throat was the movie that probably everybody wanted to see. I first visit to Los Angeles and then down to Long Beach.
What was her name?
Linda. No, that's Linda. The other one.
Linda something.
Yeah, just Linda. I forget. Anyway, it'll come to me.
Lovelace.
Inspiration.
Who was it?
Linda Lovelace.
Linda Lovelace.
That's it. Yes.
Yeah. She had a movie made about her fairly recently. Matthew didn't direct that one, but he was involved on a Joan Collins movie, apparently, he tells me.
I was, yeah, called Nutcracker.
Keep that away from me.
Just another dark film.
Right.
Was Rupert ballet dancing in it?
No.
No.
I think we better move on possibly to the 80s, Rupert, and some further name dropping.
All right. Oh, well, which bit do you want to name drop about? You mean you're not talking about that story, are you? Oh.
Shall we just say Nile Rodgers,
Yeah,
the producer of Chic, who was a friend of yours?
Yes, he's a very good friend of mine, and in those days we used to party a lot together in New York and
Rupert,
LA.
explain, because a young audience who understandably are young watching this, thinking two old juveniles, but tell them who Nile Rodgers is.
Nile Rodgers, if you remember songs like We Are Family, which he wrote in about 5 minutes, and Freak Out. And
Le Freak, Chic Le Freak.
Chic, well, you know more about it than I do.
To me, it was
I just used to go partying with
fantastic.
Yeah.
The music, Chic Le Freak, it was just the best. It was the best disco music in the late 70s, early 80s.
Yes.
And he still creates wonderful stuff. I'm not sure, did he do a collaboration with Michael Jackson recently or something? Not recently, but then since the Michael Jackson album released, and there's a holograph, and I'm not sure that it didn't use something with Nile Rodgers on that as well.
Yeah.
Great, I mean, inspirational musician.
He was at this time, I think 1982ish. He was producing Madonna, and he said to me, Rupert, he says, I think she'd be right up your street. So we're going to have this party on a boat, and I'll, she's coming, so I'm going to fix you up. So I had to go to New York, to the airport, to JFK to pick somebody up, and I was in the wrong terminal. So anyway, I was late getting back, and as I arrived in the port, the boat left the harbour, so I missed my date with Madonna. And he said, "You idiot."
That could have changed Madonna's career, really.
Absolutely,
I don't think which direction, but anyway.
Well, John, you had other things to do in 1982, like very nearly winning the World Championship.
Yes, but that's not as interesting as hearing Rupert trying to get his leg over Madonna. Story, and frankly, how it would have impacted on her career. I mean, she could have become Mrs. Keegan, for goodness sake. Rupert.
Yes.
Maria Luisa Ciccone.
Yeah.
That's about it. That's her proper name. Madonna's just a stage name.
Anyway, unfortunately,
Donna Keegan.
now, so I'd like to just thank everybody for joining us, and it's been great, this Google Hangout. Didn't even know what it was until I got here.
Like a padded cell, I'm familiar with.
See you, chaps.
See you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.